I'm Petty Officer Cody Boyd, and you're on board George Washington. This past week took GW back to the waters west of the Korean Peninsula, a near repeat of this summer's exercise Invincible Spirit. As the world watched, Team GW did what we do best. Petty Officer Danielle Brandt has a recap.
Just 5 months after its last exercise with the Republic of Korea, USS George Washington is back in the waters west of the Korean Peninsula. Witnessing this high-profile exercise, Korean media and members of the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission. The exercise involves 11 ships from the U.S. Navy and the Republic of Korea, dozens of aircraft, and more than 7,000 military personnel.
Well, we're here conducting these operations in the international waters west of the peninsula to certainly demonstrate the resolve that we have to mutual deterrence with the Republic of Korea.
After completing this exercise, GW will team up with the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force for Exercise Keen Sword 2010. For USS George Washington, I'm Petty Officer Danielle Brandt.
As Petty Officer Brandt mentioned, the media were given a front row seat for the exercise. Among them, a crew from CNN who filed this report.
CNN invited onto the USS George Washington in the hotly contested Yellow Sea. On board, a flurry of activity, 6,000 troops working around the clock, keeping the carrier group on alert, and jet fighters in the sky. One by one, these jet fighters are coming into land on the USS George Washington. There are about 75 of them, and just behind me here you can see another one coming in now. What we're seeing here is a real display of the firepower that the US and South Korea have at its disposal. These exercises have been long planned. Defensive drills and formations mainly, no live fire. But they have taken on greater significance since North Korea's attack last week on the South Yongbyon Island, killing 2 military and 2 civilians, forcing residents to flee. Now the man in charge of the whole exercise, Admiral Dan Cloyd, telling CNN this stands as a deterrent to any future aggression.
We're here to reaffirm our commitment to our Republic of Korea allies, to demonstrate collective security. Certainly, the deterrent effect that we hope we're having against North Korea is we're always mindful of that.
As the ally of South Korea, the President yesterday said he's run out of patience and tolerance with North Korea. If another act of aggression, another provocation in South Korea will hit back hard. Do you stand ready to support them in that?
Well, certainly, what decisions the government of the Republic of Korea makes, I wouldn't, it'd be inappropriate for me to speculate or comment on. But again, our mission will be out here and continue to train the Republic of Korea Navy and Air Force, part of this exercise as well.
6 South Korean warships have joined the U.S. in these drills. The George Washington's captain says these exercises underline just how vital their alliance is.
We're honored to be working with the Republic of Korea Navy, a coalition that has been very stable and strong for decades, almost my entire military career.
But North Korea has declared these drills a pretext for war, warning any incursion into the North Territory will spark a merciless military confrontation. The exercises, though, at least 100 kilometers, 60 miles from the disputed border. Inside the ship, though, radar keeps a close eye on Pyongyang. The 4-day sea and air drills are drawing to a close. All the while, diplomacy is being stepped up to try to calm the waters off the Korean coast. Envoys from the US, Japan and South Korea will meet in December to discuss the North. China holding talks in Beijing with an official from its close ally Pyongyang. And on the Yellow Sea, a display of what the military can do if needed, if talks fail. Stan Grant, CNN, on the USS George Washington, Yellow Sea.
GW is now in the middle of the Japanese-led exercise Keen Sword 2010. Keen Sword is the world's largest joint naval exercise being conducted in 2010. The Japanese-led exercise involves dozens of ships and aircraft from the U.S. and the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. Just from the U.S. alone, more than 10,000 military personnel will be taking part. The exercise runs until the 10th. Now let's take a look at news-making headlines around the fleet. Petty Officer Paul Stephen Bricker, a sailor stationed in Virginia Beach, Virginia, is now facing a charge of second-degree murder for allegedly voluntarily stabbing a Navy chief in 2009. A special agent with NCIS testified that Bricker was recruited by the chief to help him commit suicide by having the sailor stab him to death. A general district court judge certified the charges on Bricker last Thursday. The trial date is set for February 16th. Another high-profile case getting a lot of media attention is the Board of Inquiry of the former skipper of USS Cowpens. Witnesses say the wardroom lived in fear of Captain Holly Graff saying she threw coffee mugs and put officers in timeout. Former subordinates did concede that Graff had high standards and would only get loud only when she felt her officers failed to meet her standards. And finally, the Navy broke out the champagne Saturday to christen its newest LCS, the Fort Worth. Fort Worth, Texas received the honor based on its long history supporting the armed forces. The Littoral Combat Ship, or LCS, is a new class of warship designed to conduct combat operations just off an enemy shore. When we come back, Washington, D.C. has the Smithsonian, Paris has the Louvre, but did you know GW has a museum of its own? Seaman Aaron Devenberg takes us there next. Welcome back. This week, GW conducted one of the last replenishments at sea for the fall patrol. As usual, the crew did it by the book, with the book open. And that's the subject of this week's Sights and Sounds.
I work in the hangar bay, so I don't get to hear the helo as much as the people on the flight deck.
You can hear it on the RAS day, right?
Yeah, on the RAS day I can hear it. They're loud. They sound dangerous. It's like a big garbage disposal just flying in the air. I hear announcements on the 1MC, the 3MC. My favorite sound would be well, quite frankly, I'm tired of all these sounds. I just want to go back and support and get on with the business and get this done.
When pulling into a foreign port for liberty, no one wants to hear news of an anchor malfunction. That's why GW's Deck Department conducts the occasional anchor drop evolution. Petty Officer Charles Oakey has that story.
Of the tons of steel that make up USS George Washington, it's the 30-ton anchor that quickly becomes the most mission-critical part of the ship when pulling into port. Seeing anchor details is not the time to discover a problem. The reason why GW's Deck Department is conducting anchor drop evolutions while out at sea, ensuring the crew and equipment can get the job done when the order is given to drop the anchor.
It's a great tool for us. We got a lot of new guys that came on last import. They've never seen it done, a lot of new boats to make, so we're going to use it as a training tool. Make sure all of our gear is still 100% before I pull into the yard.
During her fall and summer patrol, GW only dropped her anchor twice, so this training was a good opportunity for the more experienced members of the crew as well. The training also helps to identify repairs that will be needed during the upcoming holiday stand-down. For USS George Washington, I'm Petty Officer Charles Oakey.
Well, if you've been on GW for 2 weeks like me, or even 2 years, you might not know everything the ship has to offer. Seaman Aaron Devenberg went searching for the fabled ship's museum. Devenberg, where in the GW is it?
Now, everybody knows where the hangar bay is, but not everybody knows where the ship's museum is. And if you follow me, I'm actually going to take you there today. Now, we'll start here in hangar bay 2, and we're going to go right through this door. Watch your steps. And please mind the hatch here. Now, keep following me through this doorway. This is towards the officer's brow, actually. And right here, you'll see this big blue door that's usually covering the entrance to the ship's museum. Let's go ahead and take a look inside. Now, it's quite small for a museum, but actually there's a lot to see here. Go ahead and take a look over here. There's a Chinese plate that was actually used in George Washington's home at Mount Vernon. And over here you're going to see a famous painting of George Washington as he's crossing the Delaware River. And this way, you'll see a timeline of George Washington's life, all the way up to his death. Finally, if you look over here, did you actually know that the United States military decoration, the first one ever, was actually the Purple Heart? And if you look closely, you'll see George Washington's head is right at the center of that heart. Now, the Ship's Museum is actually closed while we're out to sea. But if you're interested in viewing it, go ahead and contact the Public Affairs Office so that you can get a schedule. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Devenberg. I actually already knew where the museum